All right, goalies, welcome back to the DIY Goalie podcast. And today we're doing our very first solo episode. So you get to be stuck listening to me for the whole episode. Um, I want to start off by saying thanks again for tuning in, guys. It makes a big difference to us to get the listener support. And because of that, we're also gonna kind of try and add a little bit of engagement for you guys. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna start taking listener questions, and once we get enough of them, we're gonna make a listener question and answer episode. So if you guys have any questions that you want answered, what you can do is you can head to the DIYgoalie.com/podcast and you can put in a question, whether you just want to type it out or whether you want to actually upload an MP3 voice recording that we can clip and put into the show. That's up to you. But we'll take both. So we'll take the audio and the text submissions. And what we'll do is we'll compile a list of listener questions and we'll have a Q&A type episode where we answer them. And feel free to ask, even if it's related to some of the stuff we've already talked about in one of the episodes. I can shoot the question off to one of our experts that we've had so far and get them to put in a answer to your question. So that's first. The other thing too is just if you guys have a chance, if you guys can kind of leave a review for the show, share it with some friends, all of that good stuff. It really helps us out, helps grow the show and keeps us going. So today what we're going to be talking about is how to be more of an efficient goaltender. I like to tell my goalies when I teach them that everyone calls us goalies lazy. We may as well play lazy. And by that, I mean, let's do the minimal amount possible to get the job done. So there's two things a movement should do, or sorry, one of two things a movement should do. It should either help us get into position to stop a puck or should help us stop a puck. And that's it. So anything that you're doing that's taking away from one of those two things, we need to eliminate it from our game. And examples of that include, and we'll kind of talk more about this, but examples of that include is when your body leans away from a save, for example, that's extra movement that's taking you away from stopping a puck, right? Or if you're pushing across, your feet aren't set, you're still moving, right? That extra movement that you're doing isn't helping you get into position or make a save. That's kind of something, again, we want to eliminate. So that's sort of what we're going to dive into. There's kind of two things that we're going to be diving into when it comes to efficiency, and that's going to come down to save execution and it's going to come down to movements. So we'll kind of break down those two and the things we can do to be more efficient with both. But the bottom line, guys, is that we really just want to make sure that everything we're doing goes back to one of those two things, getting into position or stopping a puck. So when it comes to save execution, the big thing is, and if you guys are part of the email list, the April email list article that we sent, and if you guys aren't part of the email list, we do send a monthly kind of exclusive article and updates and stuff like that. So you can head to the DIYgoalie.com/email to sign up. But in April, the email list got an article talking about leaning our body and using our body, because our body area is the most area of coverage in the net, when we're making our saves, and a lot of goalies don't use it properly. So when we're making those saves, we want to make sure that the body is leaning into them, because a lot of times I see goalies that when they make a save, their body is actually pulling away from the puck. Even if it's just staying neutral, there's a lot of benefits to leaning the body into the save as opposed to just having it stay where it is. So A lot of times, especially when goalies leave one of their knees up when they drop into the butterfly, that'll pull their body away. So if you guys are kind of doing the half butterfly still, we want to try and get into that habit of both knees going straight down, because that's going to make it a lot easier to lean your body into the save. If your one leg is staying up, like we see it a lot, especially on the glove side, the big windmill glove save, that glove side knee stays up. If you watch your body actually pulls more to that blocker side. It pulls away from that puck, and that opens up more net. So we want to make sure that we're leaning that body actually into the save, because that's going to allow you to get to that puck quicker. It's also going to allow you to cut more net off, especially in the instance of a deflection. So we want to make sure that anytime we're making our save, our body is leaning towards that puck. We also want it to lean slightly forward, especially that shoulder, so that we can cut off that puck earlier in its trajectory and make sure that we're covering more net that way. The other thing, and this kind of ties in, we want to make sure when we're making our saves, we are getting straight lines to that puck. So when we're leaning the body, it's straight to that puck. When we're putting our stick on a puck, it's straight, right? We're not doing, the big one we see is mostly with the gloves. The glove likes to drop slightly before coming up to make that save, whether it's glove or blocker, and it's usually actually more so blocker. The blocker likes to pull in before it comes out to that save, and that extra movement away from the puck before going towards the puck, it creates a delay, right? And we know as goalies, anytime we delay anything, like our game's a matter of like millimeters and milliseconds. So anytime we're adding time or we're adding distance, it usually doesn't end well for us, right? So these are things, when we talk about efficiency, these are things that'll help you be quicker as a goalie without physically having to be quicker. So if you can get straight lines to that puck, it makes your life a lot easier, and you can get to the puck quicker. And realistically, guys, if you're in position, you can get to your top corner very easily without having to move a whole heck of a lot. Like we think we have to go for this big outstretched windmill glove save to get to that top corner, when realistically, with a proper body lean and with making your saves in front of your body, there really isn't like that much movement that you need to cover your post, to cover your net. And that's what's called the box, right? Box control. So if you ever get a chance, if you're on the ice, the whole dog leash trick or the ropes trick from the top corner of the net to the puck, that'll really allow you to see where your net is behind you when you're standing wherever you're standing. So top of the crease, your box is pretty small in terms of what you have to control to get to the post behind you, right? And again, especially if you're making those saves out in front, that just gets you there even quicker. So straight lines are a big one. Getting your body leaning is a big one. We want to make sure that also too, with the body, your head is what is leading you all the time, right? Goalies talk lots about tracking pucks and head trajectory, right? And that's the big thing that's really going to help you be successful as a goalie. So when that head tracks that puck into your save, you don't just want your eyes moving, you want that whole head moving, because your body follows your head. I like to do this with my goalies lightly, but if you grab the goalie's mask, like the cage, and just kind of tug on their head a little bit, ask where their body goes. Wherever you pull their head, their body's going that way, right? So your head brings your body towards wherever it's going. So if you can get that head trajectory to come towards that puck, that's going to naturally bring your body towards that save. And again, now helps you be more efficient because your body's moving there as well as your stick or your glove or whatever it is making the save, right? It also helps you, it helps with that eye-hand coordination too. Like when you're watching that puck, when you're tracking that puck properly, it's coming into your body. You know exactly where it is. You know exactly where you need to put your body to make that save. So make sure that head comes with, and we'll talk about it once we talk about movements too, but it's really important with the movements as well. So get into the habit of moving your head where you want to go, whether it's a save or a movement. We touched on it a little bit already, but I just want to emphasize too, making those saves in front of our body. That is a big one because a lot of goalies, they pull back. And what happens when you pull back is that net opens up more, right? Because again, that box control, if you play around with that, again, if you have some time, get the ropes or the dog leashes on the net just to see a little bit, right? But the more you can come in front of your body to make that save, the less trajectory the puck has had to go up, right? Because it's closer to where that shot came from. And so therefore you don't have as much coverage that you need, right? So if you think about like an angle or like even a triangle, right, that's coming up towards, the post or the top corner, the further forward in that triangle that you're going, the less height there is on that angle, right? So that means you have less coverage that you need to make that save. So make sure those saves are happening in front. Your hands are in front, your shoulder is leaning slightly forward, and the stick, guys, a lot of goalies I see make their stick saves right up against their pad. That's tough to control those rebounds, right? Get that stick out a little bit. Make sure that blocker's out, because if it's down, you're going to tip that puck top corner. Okay, but make sure that that stick's out in front, hands out in front, shoulders in front, all of that stuff. That's going to make your saves so much easier, and it's going to make the straight lines easier, and therefore you're going to be a lot more efficient in how you make your saves. Because again, you don't have to move as much as you think you do to cover the net. Trust me. Okay. And then the other thing too, when we're making our saves, kind of touched on it with the body leans and the head, but move the whole body together as one unit, right? As soon as you guys get into that habit of being able to drop and lean at the same time, as opposed to dropping first and then trying to go over and make your save, it makes a world of difference. Okay. We want to make sure that we're executing our save. Even if you're standing up, we want to make sure we're executing our save in one kind of fluid motion with our body all together. So if you are dropping into the butterfly, you want to be moving towards your save as you drop. If you are standing, if it's, a higher shot or whatever, and that's how you choose to save it, that's fine too. Just make sure, again, that body's coming while your hand is coming towards that save as your head is tracking that puck, right? And when we move, we want to make sure that the head is moving first, right? The body is following the head, because again, that comes from the tracking, that comes from the head trajectory, and everything's going to follow that head. But again, that means you're tracking the puck well, and you know where to put your body. The last one I'll touch on for save execution, because I see a lot of goalies do this and it gets them in a lot of trouble. And I have a couple buddies actually that give me a hard time for this, because when we're watching NHL games, mostly Oiler games, because, we're Oilers fans, but I will text them after a goal and I will say, this is why you don't slide into saves, kids, if a goalie slid and got scored on because they slid. So a lot of goalies, again, think they have to move more than they do. You guys don't. But a lot of times they'll slide towards their save. Now, this is different on a lateral play. I'm talking straight shots right now. So if it's a straight shot, if you're setting in position, shot comes and you slide, the problem is even if you make that save, you're usually not in a good spot for your rebound, okay? Because if you slide one way, and I think we've all had this happen before, when it hits the inside of your blocker. So say you slide into a blocker save, it hits the inside of your blocker, and now that puck kicks out to your glove side. Well, now you're sliding to your blocker side, that puck's kicked out to your glove side on the rebound. Now that net's wide open, right? So it also makes it hard, because now on your recovery, you have to stop and now go back the other way. And again, it just creates that delay. Anytime we're adding time or distance to our game, we're putting ourselves in a bad spot. Okay, so make sure we don't slide into our saves. Now, the only exception to that rule is if there's a deflection threat off to the side, like it's a shot pass kind of to that backdoor area, or of course on a lateral play. But any straight shots, because again, the slide too can actually hinder your ability to stop a deflection. If it's a high tip in the slot that goes back to your glove side while you're sliding to your blocker side, one, that probably would have hit you if you hadn't slid, but now you've given up that whole net, right? So again, we don't want to have any lateral movement on straight shots. We just want to drop those knees if we're dropping those knees and use that body to lean into that save instead. So that's when I see a lot of goalies do that can get them into trouble, because again, now it's just adding extra movement that's not helping us to stop a puck or to get into position. And actually, it's probably doing the opposite. So that's something that, again, we want to get out of our game if we want to be efficient. So that kind of takes us to the movement side of things. Again, a lot of this will kind of be similar, but we want to make sure that any movement we're doing is getting us into position, and then that's it. A lot of goalies at the end of their movement, they like to drift a little bit, whether it's forwards or whether it's backwards. Okay, I've seen both. Now, what that's going to do is that's going to make it a little harder to make a save, because let me ask you this. Is it easier to make a save when you're standing still, set, ready to go? Or is it easier to make a save when your feet are moving? The answer is it's easier to make a save when you're set and you're standing still, right? You're ready for that shot. Because the other thing too that happens is if you're drifting, if you're moving still after that shot, it can make it a little harder to move across, right? Especially if you're drifting forward, because then that lateral movement is a lot harder to make. It's a lot harder to get back into that lane. Now, on the flip side of things, if you're sucking back after you've pushed across, now you're just opening up more net for that shooter, right? So we just want to make sure that anytime we move across, we get a good hard stop, and that's it, right? We're just sitting there, we're waiting. As goalies, we have to be the patient ones. Let the players make the moves. Just get into your spot and wait for them, right? Track that puck. Watch if they're taking a shot or making a pass. But other than that, we're just waiting, okay? A big one, too, during movements is rotations, okay? A lot of goalies, the reason why they can't get across, or when they do get across, they're all stretched out, is more often than not because they don't get a good rotation before they push. That's the big thing, is doing it before you push. So you could argue that, yes, it takes a split second longer to get across because you're taking the extra time to move before you push. However, that rotation helps you get into that lane better. You get a better angle on that push, and therefore you actually get into the lane quicker. So you get to that end point quicker. A lot of times goalies will just push flat, and it doesn't really work because now you have a lot further to push to get on that same angle than if you rotated and kind of cut back on that angle a little bit more. So what I tell my goalies is rotate to get square to where you're pushing, okay? So if it's a pass across, the threat is the player's blade, so push to that, right? Find that blade with your eyes. So again, that eyes and the head go first, and then rotate to square up to that blade, okay? Once you do that, then you can get a nice straight push across. You're right in that angle. Once you get an angle with that blade, you're in position. You get a good hard stop. You're ready to go. It's nice and easy. So when we do these rotations, we want to do what I call working top down. So that's your head, and then your body and your hands follow, and your hips and your feet follow after that, right? So again, that head is leading us to where we want to go. Because if we try and move our feet first and push, you might have some rotation on your hips, but you're going to leave your body behind. And that's a lot of times when goalies kind of get outstretched. They're trying to make a paddle save or get a glove on it, or hopefully they get the shot buried into their pad while they make the splits across the net. And those saves look fantastic when you make them. The problem is in that position, the odds of us making that save go down significantly. Because again, that body is our biggest area of coverage. So we want to get that body across when we push. And the rotation going top down in our rotation helps a lot with that. Okay. So again, just square up to where you're pushing before. So get a rotation to square up where you're pushing before you push, and then make that push. That'll help you get across a lot simpler, a lot quicker, a lot easier, and a lot more efficient. The other thing too, and this kind of ties into the save execution, but our rebound control and our recoveries. So if we make our saves properly, we should be getting any rebounds off to the corner, or at least off to an area of the ice that is low danger. Because sometimes trying to put a puck to the corner either isn't very feasible, or maybe there's a bunch of guys off to the side of the net and maybe it's not the best place to put it. But either way, when we're controlling our rebounds, we want to make sure that we get proper recoveries. And this is kind of where the save execution and the movements tie in together. But if we can use that head to make our save, so to bring our body into that save, what that's going to allow us to do is now it's going to allow us to start that rotation into our movement a lot easier. Because if you think about it, say we make a stick save, we stick it off to the corner, our head tracked the puck down to our stick and our hands were out in front of our body, and we leaned our body slightly down towards that save. Now when we make that save, as soon as your head watches that puck off to the corner, your head has already started that rotation of your body towards that rebound, right? So now all we have to do is take that body, finish that rotation, and then the hips go and we can make that recovery nice and simple, right? So again, when we make that save, that head's going to come down towards that save. Then it's going to come up a little bit to find where that rebound is. But as it comes up, it's going to start to rotate, which will then bring our body, which can then bring our hips. And then all of a sudden you're recovered to your rebound before anyone's even gotten to that puck. And you get a good hard stop like we talked about. You're in position. Bam, things are nice and easy, right? The problem is when we get into being behind the play. So anytime we do our movements, if we're being efficient, we can stay ahead of that play. We can get ourselves into position. And then again, we're being patient. We let the players make the move. And that's when goalies are very successful, right? If you watch some of the top end goalies in the NHL, they're there early and they're ready to go. And a lot of this is because the way they move is super efficient. So again, just make sure too, when we're moving, that the whole body moves together, just like we talked about in save execution. So yes, we want to work top down, but as that head goes, it's pulling that body and those hands over, which is pulling the hips over, which is carrying through to the feet to make that push across. Okay. We want to make sure that everything goes together. It doesn't work if you leave your hands behind. If you get a great rotation, but you leave your hands behind, your hands are going to pull your body back, right? Again, we talked about if you get your feet and your hips over, but you leave your body behind, that doesn't work too much either, right? Same thing if you leave your hips behind. Because if your body rotates, but your hips don't, you're still going to push flat. You're not going to get that rotation across. So make sure, again, everything works together. Just practice that. Even if you don't push, just practice rotating from the top down. Okay, get your head, your body, your hips, your feet going. The other thing too, one of my coaches actually explains it a little differently. So I explain it as top down. He explains it as the 4 H's. So head, hands, hips, heels. It's the same way of explaining it, but it's the same concept, different way of explaining it. So whatever works for you, that's fine. But just make sure that you're working the head first, the body and the hands follow, then the hips, then the feet. Okay. So the big thing is, guys, just make sure to keep in mind, especially if you're breaking down your own game, like we talked about with Tim Turk a few weeks ago. If you're doing video, if you're breaking down your own game, which you should, it's fantastic. It's a great way to learn and get better. Make sure you're looking to see any movement that you do. Is it helping you get into position, or is it helping you stop a puck? And if the answer to both of those questions is no, you need to eliminate it from your game. And actually, one thing too that I want to touch on that a lot of goalies do is when we're doing our movements, a lot of goalies like to actually pull up through their movements. So you'll see, I call it bobbing, especially on shuffles. You can really see if they're pulling up on shuffles because they bob up and down. But you'll see a lot in T-pushes too, is the shoulders come up and then come back down near the end to get into position, or they'll stay up, and when the goalie stops at the end of their push, then they'll have to kind of sink back down into their stance. So that's another one too, is just make sure, like I tell my goalies, I should be able to hold up my stick where your shoulders are right now, and throughout your whole push, your shoulders should stay on that same line the whole time, because that allows you, once you get to your end position, that allows you to get your stop, and then you're already set. You don't have to take that extra time to now come back down to get set again. So just another thing there on the movements. But so that's one that's common you can look for when you're breaking down your own game is, am I coming up through my saves? Am I rotating properly through my pushes, right? Is my whole body coming with me when I make a push or when I make a save? Am I making saves in front of my body? Is my body leaning towards the puck, right? Am I getting straight lines to the puck? Like, again, if you're breaking down your game, see if you pull in a little bit before coming out, because that's a common one too. And that's one that, that split second difference can be the difference between a lot of goals over the course of a season, right? And then watch your head. Is your head leading your body? Are you tracking the pucks? Are you rotating your head past your save too, like on your rebounds? Because it's one thing to track a puck into your save. It's another to track it off of your body to follow those rebounds. So if you're breaking down your own game, make sure you're watching for these things and ask yourself those two questions. Is it helping me get into position, or is it helping me stop a puck? And if not, work on getting it out of your game. Just want to touch on it again. If you guys have any listener questions that you want answered, head to the DIYgoalie.com/podcast. You can put in a submission, either text or an MP3 voice recording with your question, and either I'll read if it's a text submission, or I'll clip it and put it into the show if you leave a voice recording. But either or, we want to get some of your questions going and just kind of have a little bit more listener interaction. Again, guys, much appreciated that you're tuning in. I hope you're getting a lot of value out of it. Let us know. You can always send us an email at info@DIYgoalie.com. Leave us a review. Let us know how you feel about the show. And as always, you can check out articles, drills, videos. We've got some merch as well, but everything like that at DIYgoalie.com. And yeah, we appreciate you tuning in. And thanks again for sticking with us this week, and we'll see you again next week.